the Neanderthals. Even their name evokes a certain brute caricature, hunched, hairy and primitive. But the more we learn about these ancient relatives of ours, the more complex and fascinating they become. Far from the dim-witted cavemen of outdated textbooks, Neanderthals were intelligent, resourceful, and highly adaptable hominins who thrived in some of the harshest environments ever faced by our ancestors. As we begin our dive into the turbulent history and lives of our ancient relatives, we must travel back in time, not just thousands, but hundreds of thousands of years ago, to an epoch called the Pleistocene. This was the age of the Neanderthals, a time when great ice sheets advanced and retreated across the continents, when giant beasts like woolly mammoths, cave bears, and dire wolves roamed the land. It was in this often brutal, unforgiving environment that the Neanderthals made their home. But who exactly were the Neanderthals? For a long time, these early humans were stereotyped as dim-witted brutes, more ape than man. But as we'll see, this couldn't be further from the truth. The Neanderthals were a highly adaptive, intelligent species who thrived for an astonishing 300,000 years. That's over 10 times longer than our own species, Homo sapiens, has walked the earth. The story of the Neanderthals begins around 400,000 years ago, when populations of ancient humans started evolving distinctive Neanderthal traits. Fossil evidence shows they were stocky and muscular, with barrel chests and strong, thick bones. But it's the Neanderthal skull that really sets them apart. With their protruding brow ridges, large noses, and elongated crania, Neanderthal faces may seem almost comically exaggerated to us. But these weren't just random features. The Neanderthal face was expertly equipped for life in the frigid climes of the Pleistocene. Those large noses and cheekbones housed enlarged sinuses, which warmed and humidified the glacial air they breathed. Meanwhile, their forward-projecting faces reduced exposure to the biting cold. But the Neanderthals' raw physicality belied a keen intelligence. Their brains were actually larger on average than ours today. And as the archaeological record reveals, the Neanderthals were no simple cavemen. They were crafty survivors who used their wits and skills to eke out a living on the mammoth steppe. Take their tools, for example. Neanderthals were master flint knappers, capable of making a wide array of sophisticated implements. Their signature technology was the Mousterian stone tool industry, named for the Le Moustier site in France, where it was first identified. Using techniques like Levallois flake removal, the Neanderthals fashioned sharp points, scrapers, and hand axes from flint, quartzite, and other raw materials. These tools were not only functional, but represented a great leap forward in human technology. With them, Neanderthals could break down carcasses, process plant foods, work wood and hides, and much more. Some archaeologists have even argued that Neanderthal tools showcase the beginnings of symbolic thought. The Neanderthals, it seems, had the capacity to think beyond their immediate needs and plan for the future. Of course, in the unforgiving world of the Pleistocene, ingenuity would only get you so far. To survive and reproduce, you needed sustenance. Here again, the Neanderthals proved surprisingly adaptable. While many imagined them as spear-wielding mammoth hunters, the reality was more complex. Neanderthals were expert ambush hunters of large game like reindeer, red deer, bison, wild cattle, and horses. By working together strategically, they could take down prey many times their size. Archaeological sites are littered with the butchered bones of these Ice Age giants, but the Neanderthals didn't stop there. Isotopic analysis of their remains shows that Neanderthals also ate small game, from birds to rabbits to fish. And during the lean times, they supplemented their diets with roots, tubers, nuts, and wild harvests. This flexibility served the Neanderthals well, as they spread across Eurasia, from the icy tundra in the north to the wooded mountains of the south. But survival in such diverse and changeable habitats took more than a generalist diet. The Neanderthals had to be resourceful, using every part of their environment and their prey. In the depths of a brutal Pleistocene winter, fresh food would have been scarce, but in caves and rock shelters across their range, archaeologists have found evidence of Neanderthals storing bones to eat later as bone marrow, using fire to drive prey, and perhaps even smoking meat to preserve it. These were the original experts in nose-to-tail eating. As impressive as their physical and technological adaptations were, it's the glimmers of Neanderthal emotional and spiritual life that really challenge our preconceptions. At sites in France and Spain, researchers have uncovered rare grave goods like animal bones, antlers, and even flowers buried alongside Neanderthal skeletons. Some individuals show signs of surviving severe injuries and illnesses thanks to long-term care from their social groups. But perhaps most intriguing of all is the growing evidence that the Neanderthals, like us, engaged in creative and symbolic expression. In 2018, researchers made a breathtaking discovery in the Spanish cave of Cueva de los Aviones. Perforated seashells and pigments that Neanderthals had collected and modified, most likely as a form of decoration or jewelry. And in caves from Gibraltar to Iraq, Neanderthal artists left behind geometric scratchings, hand stencils, and abstract designs that may represent some of the earliest known cave art. It's a remarkable irony. For most of the time that scientists have been aware of their existence, Neanderthals have been cast as subhuman primitives. But with every new fossil and artifact, every advance in dating technology and scientific analysis, the picture that emerges is one of startling sophistication. The more we learn, the more the Neanderthals start to look like us, creative, adaptive, intelligent, and undeniably human. But if the Neanderthals were so resourceful, such masterful survivors in the brutal world of the Pleistocene, what happened to them? Why, after 300,000 years of endurance against all odds, did our evolutionary cousins suddenly vanish off the face of the Earth? The last traces of the Neanderthals in the fossil record date to around 40,000 years ago, and then, like so many ghosts, they were gone. In our next section, we'll explore the gripping mystery of the Neanderthal disappearance, and what their extinction can teach us about the fragility of even the most successful species. With the latest scientific evidence as our guide, we'll consider the roles of climate change, competition with modern humans, and even interbreeding in the Neanderthals' demise. The answers may surprise you, and just might make you see our long-lost cousins in a whole new light. Stay tuned. We begin our story around 400,000 years ago in the middle of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of vast ice sheets, towering megafauna, and the rise of a remarkable new species of ancient human. Fossil evidence from sites across Eurasia has revealed that Neanderthals evolved from earlier hominins, likely Homo heidelbergensis, who had already begun to adapt to the unique pressures of survival in these often bleak Ice Age environments. One of the defining features of the Neanderthals was their distinctive physique. Stocky and powerfully built, with barrel chests and muscular limbs, Neanderthals were well suited to the rigors of a strenuous, physically demanding life of hunting and foraging. Their robust skeletal anatomy hints at an active lifestyle and a protein-rich diet heavily reliant on meat from large animals like woolly mammoths, woolly rhinos, and giant elk. These specialized adaptations came at a cost, however. Neanderthals likely required up to 5,000 calories a day to fuel their high-octane metabolisms, far more than the typical modern human. Obtaining enough food was a constant challenge, and Neanderthals lived a feast or famine existence, gorging themselves after a successful hunt, but also enduring long stretches of scarcity and hunger. To maximize their chances of securing prey, Neanderthals crafted an innovative toolkit that went beyond the crude implements used by earlier hominins. Using a technique called levallois, they fashioned sharp, symmetrical stone points that could be hafted onto wooden spears for hunting at a distance. Microwear analysis on Neanderthal teeth suggests they used their mouths as a third hand to help craft these tools, clenching hides or plant fibers as they worked. This behavior likely contributed to the heavy wear observed on Neanderthal front teeth. Over hundreds of millennia, Neanderthals put these survival strategies to good use, successfully expanding their range across a vast swath of Western Eurasia. From the icy tundras of northern Europe to the lush woodlands of the Levant and the rugged highlands of Siberia and Central Asia, Neanderthals thrived in a striking diversity of Ice Age habitats. But while Neanderthals' brawn and brains had served them well for many thousands of generations, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. Around 130,000 years ago, a new species of human was evolving in Africa, one that would alter the course of Neanderthal history forever. Homo sapiens had arrived on the scene, and the clash of cultures that would follow would be the ultimate test of Neanderthals' ability to adapt and endure. The story of the Neanderthals begins over 400,000 years ago, in the middle of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of vast ice sheets, lower sea levels, and large land mammals roaming the continents. It was during this period that the ancestors of modern humans first began to diverge from other early hominins, embarking on separate evolutionary paths that would shape the future of our species. One of these lineages would give rise to the Neanderthals, a remarkable people who thrived in the often brutal conditions of Ice Age Eurasia. Stout and powerfully built, with distinctive brow ridges and large noses, the Neanderthals were well adapted to the cold climate and challenging landscapes they inhabited. From the sun-baked shores of southern Iberia to the frozen steppes of Central Asia, Neanderthals carved out an existence as skilled hunters and gatherers. Their stone tools, including heavy-duty hand axes and finely crafted spear points, attest to their technological sophistication and ability to exploit a wide range of animal and plant resources. But the Neanderthal story is not just one of survival in the face of adversity. Recent discoveries have also shed light on their rich cognitive and cultural abilities. At sites like Gorham's Cave in Gibraltar and Bruniquel Cave in France, archaeologists have unearthed tantalizing evidence of Neanderthal symbolic expression, including carved artifacts, pigments, and even elaborate structures built deep underground. These finds challenge long-held assumptions about the Neanderthals as primitive and unsophisticated, revealing them to be far more complex and capable than previously believed. They hinted at people who not only mastered their environment, but also grappled with profound questions of identity, meaning, and their place in the world. As we delve deeper into the Neanderthal story, we'll meet some of the remarkable individuals who have helped to piece together their enigmatic legacy. From the pioneering fossil hunters of the 19th century to the cutting-edge scientists of today, these intrepid researchers have dedicated their lives to unraveling the mysteries of our long-lost cousins. One such figure is the French paleontologist Marcellin Boule, who in the early 1900s conducted the first detailed study of a near-complete Neanderthal skeleton discovered in the small village of La Chapelle-aux-Saints. Boule's analysis, while groundbreaking for its time, was heavily influenced by the prevailing biases of the era, leading him to portray Neanderthals as brutish, stooped, and dim-witted. It would take decades of further research and discovery to overturn this flawed perception and reveal the Neanderthals in a new light. Today, thanks to the tireless efforts of scientists like Jean-Jacques Houblin, Svante Pääbo, and many others, we have a far more nuanced and compelling picture of these remarkable early humans. But even as we celebrate the Neanderthals' achievements and resilience, we must also confront the enduring mystery of their disappearance. After thriving for hundreds of thousands of years, they vanished from the fossil record around 40,000 years ago, leaving only tantalizing clues as to their fate. Did they succumb to the harsh conditions of the last glacial maximum, with its bitterly cold temperatures and scarce resources? Were they outcompeted or assimilated by the advancing modern humans, with their superior technology and social networks? Or was there some other factor at play? A perfect storm of environmental, demographic, and perhaps even epidemiological pressures that finally spelled their doom. As we ponder these questions, we must also grapple with the implications of the Neanderthals' extinction for our own species. In a world facing rapid climate change, habitat loss, and the ever-present threat of new pathogens, their story takes on a new and urgent relevance. It reminds us of the precariousness of even the most successful species, and the need for adaptability, cooperation, and foresight in the face of existential challenges. It invites us to consider our own place in the grand sweep of human history, and to ask what legacy we will leave for the generations to come. As we continue our journey through the world of the Neanderthals, keep these questions in mind. Let their story inspire you to think deeply about what it means to be human, and to cherish the precious and fragile gift of life on this planet. The secrets of our past may just hold the key to our future. As we begin our story, let's travel back some 400,000 years ago, to a time when the Neanderthals first emerged as a distinct species in the bitter cold of Ice Age Europe. Picture a vast, glacier-scarred landscape where hulking mammoths and woolly rhinos roamed the grassy steppes, while giant cave bears and saber-toothed cats stalked the shadowy forests. It was in this unforgiving world that a stocky, powerful early human, the Neanderthal, first made its mark. Evolutionary cousins of our own species, Homo sapiens, the Neanderthals, were superbly adapted to the harsh Pleistocene environment. With their barrel-chested, muscular builds and large brains, they were formidable hunters, unafraid to take on the biggest and most dangerous Ice Age beasts. Indeed, fossil evidence reveals that Neanderthals regularly tackled mammoths, rhinos, and even enormous cave bears, a feat that would strike terror into the hearts of most modern humans. Imagine a group of Neanderthal hunters, armed with heavy wooden spears, working together to drive a towering mammoth over a cliff edge. Or picture a lone Neanderthal warrior, facing off against the enraged cave bear with only a sharpened stone blade. Such dramatic scenes were all in a day's work for the Neanderthals, whose survival depended on an intimate knowledge of the landscape and the creatures they shared it with. And yet, as we'll see, there was much more to Neanderthal life than the brute force and physical courage needed to survive. For one remarkable Neanderthal individual, known to us today only as Shanidar I, life took an unexpected turn some 50,000 years ago in what is now Iraq. Discovered by archaeologists in the 1950s, Shanidar I's skeleton tells a poignant tale of compassion and care among these early humans. Despite multiple devastating injuries, including a withered right arm, crushed skull, and blindness in one eye, Shanidar I did not die from his wounds. Instead, he lived for years after sustaining them, reaching an advanced age for a Neanderthal. For experts, this is compelling evidence that Shanidar I's injuries were treated and that he was looked after by other members of his social group. It's a touching reminder that for all their toughness, Neanderthals were not brutes. They lived in close-knit family groups, cared for their sick and wounded, and even buried their dead with ceremonial grave goods, like eagle claws and flowers. So while the world of the Neanderthals could indeed be brutal, it was also a world of close social bonds, where the strong protected the weak and where compassion could blossom even in the bleakest of circumstances. And it's here, in the surprising richness of Neanderthal society and culture, that we begin to see not brutes, but long-lost cousins, who had more in common with us than we ever imagined. The story of the Neanderthals begins over 400,000 years ago, in the middle of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of dramatic climate shifts, rapidly advancing and retreating ice sheets, and some of the most magnificent megafauna ever to walk the earth. It was in this tumultuous world that a new species of human evolved from an earlier ancestor, Homo heidelbergensis. The Neanderthals, or Homo neanderthalensis, were superbly adapted to the often brutal conditions of this era. Physically, they were stocky and powerfully built, with barrel chests, short limbs, and large skulls. These traits made them well suited to conserving heat and energy in the cold climates of Ice Age Europe and Asia. But the Neanderthals were much more than brute cavemen. Through fossil and archaeological evidence, a picture emerges of a highly intelligent, resourceful, and even cultured species. Take, for example, the discovery of specialized tools at Neanderthal sites across Europe. Finely crafted stone points, used for hunting, show a deep understanding of the properties of different rock types. Where patterns on the teeth of Neanderthal fossils suggest they used their mouths as a third hand to help craft hides and other materials. And intricate bone and antler tools hint at a capability for long-term planning and complex sequences of behavior. The Neanderthals were also top predators, skilled at taking down the huge Ice Age beasts that roamed their world. Fossil evidence shows that they regularly hunted mammoths, woolly rhinos, giant deer, and wild cattle, using carefully orchestrated ambush techniques and close-range thrusting spears to bring down prey many times their size. Neanderthal bones show a high frequency of injuries, consistent with the risks of close-quarter megafaunal hunting. But it wasn't all hunting and survival. The Neanderthals also had a surprisingly rich symbolic and artistic life. At sites across their former range, archaeologists have uncovered pigments like red ochre, used to color objects and possibly even their skin. Fossil shells with drilled holes, likely worn as ornaments, and the discovery of engraved lines on stones and bones hint at the first stirrings of artistic expression. Perhaps most intriguing is the glimpse Neanderthal burials give us into their social and spiritual world. The careful positioning of bodies and the inclusion of grave goods like animal bones and stone tools suggest the Neanderthals possessed great empathy, cared for their sick and elderly, and had some notion of an afterlife. As the Neanderthals spread across Europe and Asia, they diverged into distinct regional populations, each adapted to the unique mix of prey, plants, and conditions in their environment. But although scattered, they maintained cultural connections over thousands of kilometers and through many generations. The very existence of the Neanderthals for hundreds of thousands of years is a testament to their exceptional resilience, skill, and ability to cooperate in small, tightly knit bands. But nothing lasts forever. Beginning around 45,000 years ago, the Neanderthals faced unprecedented challenges as the world around them began to change. Massive volcanic eruptions and rapid climate swings transformed the European landscape. Megafauna, the Neanderthals, depended on dwindled toward extinction. New bands of sophisticated modern humans with advanced technologies began pushing into Neanderthal territories, and a confluence of other still poorly understood pressures squeezed the Neanderthals on all sides. What we do know is that by around 40,000 years ago, the Neanderthals, a species that weathered the worst the Pleistocene could throw at them for hundreds of millennia, had disappeared from the archaeological record. whether they were outcompeted by modern humans, absorbed through interbreeding, or victims of a catastrophe we have yet to discover, the reign of the Neanderthals was over. But in another sense, the Neanderthals live on in the small slivers of their DNA that many of us still carry today, and in the emerging details of their world and lives. Through the tireless work of scientists piecing together fossil fragments, pollen grains, and stone flakes, we're uncovering the captivating and poignant story of these long-lost relatives, the original humans of Ice Age Europe. As you've seen, it's a story of endurance against incredible odds, of cooperation and cultural flowering in the face of an often pitiless environment. A story of a species that almost made it, but vanished in the prehistoric shadows, leaving us to wonder what might have been. This is their story, the story of the Neanderthals, of their brutal yet beautiful world, and the provocative mystery of their disappearance. A story perhaps not so different from our own. Join me as we continue our journey into the haunting and hidden history of the Neanderthals, and reflect on what it means to be human in an uncertain and ever-changing world. Imagine for a moment that we could travel back in time, not just a few centuries, but hundreds of thousands of years into the past. The world we'd find would be both familiar and alien. Vast glaciers cover much of the northern hemisphere. Mammoths and woolly rhinos roam the steppe tundra, and our early human ancestors struggled to survive in this often brutal environment. Among these ancient people are the Neanderthals, a species or subspecies of archaic humans who thrived across Eurasia for over 300,000 years. The very name Neanderthal has become synonymous with a primitive brute in popular culture. But as we'll see, the archaeological evidence paints a far more complex and fascinating picture of these close evolutionary cousins. The story of the Neanderthals begins, as far as we can tell, some 430,000 years ago in Europe. It was here that a new kind of ancient human emerged, descended from earlier ancestors who had spread out of Africa. These proto-Neanderthals lived in a world very different from our own, a world in the grip of the Pleistocene Ice Age. Massive sheets of ice up to 2 miles thick blanketed Scandinavia, the British Isles, and much of Central and Eastern Europe. At the peak of these glacial cycles, global temperatures averaged 12 degrees Celsius colder than today. Sea levels plummeted as water became locked up in ice, exposing vast swaths of coastline. In this harsh world, the early Neanderthals clung to existence. Archaeological sites from Spain to Siberia contain evidence of their presence: scattered animal bones, simple stone tools, and hearths filled with charcoal. With their stocky frames, barrel chests, and robust limb bones, the Neanderthals were well adapted to the physical rigors and chilly climate of Pleistocene Eurasia. Over hundreds of thousands of years, the Neanderthals would evolve unique physical traits and develop sophisticated survival strategies. They became apex predators, crafting a diverse toolkit of stone weapons to bring down large game like bison, horses, and deer. Contrary to popular depictions of them as dim-witted brutes, the fossil evidence reveals the Neanderthals to be intelligent, adaptive, and resourceful. Indeed, in many ways, the Neanderthals were remarkably similar to us. Their brains were comparable in size to ours. They used fire, buried their dead, and developed complex social bonds. Some of the most tantalizing evidence even hints that the Neanderthals made symbolic art and ornaments, once thought to be the sole purview of modern humans. But for all their abilities, the Neanderthals would ultimately face challenges they could not overcome. As the climate shifted and modern humans spread across Eurasia, the Neanderthals found themselves in an increasingly precarious position. In the end, after weathering the Ice Age for millennia, this ancient human species would disappear, leaving us to ponder their fate. Our story begins over 400,000 years ago, in the middle of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of vast ice sheets, towering megafauna, and the emergence of a remarkable new species of human. From the fossil-rich caves of Europe to the windswept steppes of Central Asia, fragments of bone and stone are all that remain to tell the tale of the Neanderthals. But what a story they have to share. As the Ice Age tightened its grip, the Neanderthals were slowly diverging from other archaic human populations, evolving unique adaptations that would serve them well in the challenging environments to come. Their barrel-chested, stocky builds and impressive musculature hint at lives of near-constant physical exertion. Wide hips and short limbs help them conserve precious body heat, while their prominent brow ridges and wide noses warmed the frigid air they breathed. These physical traits tell us that the Neanderthals were not primitive brutes, but a highly specialized human species, well adapted to the extreme demands of their Ice Age world. And the story of how they survived and thrived in some of the harshest conditions our planet has ever known is written in their bones. Take the individual known to science as Shanidar I, a Neanderthal male unearthed in the foothills of the Zagros Mountains in Iraq. From his battered skull and heavily worn teeth to the brutal injuries that ultimately claimed his life, Shanidar I embodies the realities of a Neanderthal's existence, one often cut short by violence, illness, or injury. CT scans reveal that years before his death, Shanidar I suffered a devastating blow to the side of his head, probably from a close encounter with some fearsome creature. The attack left him with a crushed eye socket, a brain injury, and damage to the frontal lobe. But this was not the end for Shanidar I. Incredibly, his injuries healed, and he lived on for many more years, a testament to the resilience and tenacity of the Neanderthals. And Shanidar I is not alone in bearing the scars of a dangerous life. From fractured ribs to skull traumas, to even a case of possible cannibalism, Neanderthal bones offer a grim record of the perils they faced. In a time when simply surviving to adulthood was a feat, the average Neanderthal could expect to live only into their 30s. Yet in spite of the many threats to their existence, the Neanderthals not only endured, but flourished. From their origins in Europe, they gradually expanded their range across Eurasia, from the icy tundras of Siberia to the searing deserts of the Middle East. This great diaspora speaks volumes about the Neanderthals' ability to adapt to an astonishing range of habitats and climates. So how did they do it? What were the keys to the Neanderthals' success? The answers lie in the sophisticated tools and techniques they pioneered, the products of their considerable brain power and ingenuity. Picture a world very different from our own, a world in the grip of an ice age, where vast glaciers dominate the landscape and the climate swings between biting cold and fleeting warmth. This is the stage upon which the Neanderthal story unfolds. To understand the Neanderthals, we must first look to their origins. Around 600,000 years ago, a population of early humans ventured out of Africa and into Eurasia. Over millennia, they adapted to the challenges of their new environment, evolving distinctive features like barrel-shaped chests, angled cheekbones, and prominent brow ridges. By 400,000 years ago, these archaic humans had become the Neanderthals. Life for the Neanderthals was a constant struggle for survival in a world where danger lurked around every corner. They shared their habitat with fearsome predators like cave lions, dire wolves, and cave hyenas. To hold their own in this unforgiving landscape, the Neanderthals had to be tough, resilient, and resourceful. And resourceful they were. The archaeological record reveals the Neanderthals as adept toolmakers, fashioning a variety of stone implements for tasks like butchering, woodworking, and hide scraping. Over time, their toolkit grew more sophisticated, culminating in the Mousterian industry, a versatile repertoire of flakes, points, and hand axes that allowed Neanderthals to exploit a wide range of food sources. But it wasn't just their tools that set the Neanderthals apart. Their very bodies were honed for the challenges of their environment. With their thick, powerful builds and large, energy-hungry brains, Neanderthals were adapted for short bursts of strenuous activity, like ambushing prey or fending off predators. This combination of brains and brawn served the Neanderthals well for hundreds of thousands of years. At their peak, they ranged across a vast swath of Eurasia, from the craggy coasts of Portugal to the rugged mountains of Central Asia. They thrived in a variety of habitats, from subarctic tundra to Mediterranean woodlands. But even as the Neanderthals reached the apex of their reign, trouble was brewing. The climate, never stable to begin with, grew increasingly erratic. The earth shuddered between bouts of deep freeze and thaw, each shift reconfiguring the landscape and scrambling the delicate web of life the Neanderthals depended on. To make matters worse, the Neanderthals suddenly found they were not alone. Around 45,000 years ago, a new kind of human appeared on the scene, the anatomically modern Homo sapiens, our own species. These newcomers, with their high foreheads and graceful builds, brought with them a radically different way of life, one that would spell doom for the Neanderthals. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To truly appreciate the Neanderthal story, we need to explore their world in more intimate detail. In the next chapter, we'll descend into the depths of a Neanderthal cave to uncover what daily life was like for these remarkable early humans. What we find may surprise you. The Neanderthals first appeared on the evolutionary stage around 400,000 years ago, during the latter part of the Pleistocene epoch. This was an age of climatic extremes, marked by dramatic shifts between frigid glacial periods and milder interglacial phases. Against this backdrop of environmental upheaval, a new species of hominin emerged from an earlier ancestor, Homo heidelbergensis. These archaic humans would come to be known as the Neanderthals, named after the Neander Valley in Germany, where their fossils were first discovered in 1856. But long before that fateful find, the Neanderthals had already embarked on an incredible odyssey of survival and adaptation that would see them master the challenges of their Ice Age world for over 200,000 years. So who were the Neanderthals? For much of the 20th century, they were stereotyped as dim-witted brutes, more ape than human. But as we'll see, nothing could be further from the truth. The latest scientific evidence paints a far more nuanced and fascinating portrait of our long-lost evolutionary cousins. From their powerfully built physiques to their impressive toolkit of stone implements, the Neanderthals were exquisitely adapted to the demanding conditions of Pleistocene Eurasia. Their short, robust stature and barrel-shaped chests reflect the need to conserve heat in sub-zero temperatures. Pronounced brow ridges shielded their eyes from the blinding glare of snow and ice. These were not primitive ape-men, but resilient survivors, shaped by natural selection to withstand the worst that the Ice Age could throw at them. Indeed, Neanderthal fossils from across their range, spanning from present-day Spain and Italy in the west, all the way to Israel, Uzbekistan, and Siberia in the east, testify to both their adaptability and their extensive distribution. Clearly, these early humans were no slouches when it came to colonizing new territories and exploiting the resources they found there. So how did they do it? What was the key to the Neanderthals' success in such challenging environments? To answer that, we need to examine the sophisticated tools and behaviors that set them apart from other hominins of their time. The story of the Neanderthals is, in many ways, the story of a species defined by innovation and resilience in the face of adversity. Our story begins over 400,000 years ago, in the mid-Pleistocene epoch, when a new species of human began to emerge in the ancient landscapes of Europe and Western Asia. Descended from earlier Homo heidelbergensis populations, these archaic humans would come to be known as the Neanderthals. Named after the Neander Valley in Germany, where their fossils were first discovered in the 19th century, the Neanderthals were well adapted to the challenging environments of the Pleistocene. With their short, stocky builds, barrel-shaped chests and powerful limbs, Neanderthals were built for endurance and strength. These traits served them well in the cold, harsh conditions of the Ice Age. Over hundreds of millennia, the Neanderthals spread across Eurasia, from the Iberian Peninsula to the Altai Mountains of southern Siberia. They inhabited a wide range of environments, from the icy tundras of the north to the temperate woodlands and grasslands of the south. This ability to adapt and thrive in diverse habitats is a testament to the Neanderthals' resilience and ingenuity. One of the keys to the Neanderthals' success was their advanced toolkit. As skilled toolmakers, they crafted a variety of sophisticated stone implements for hunting, butchering, woodworking, and hide processing. The Mousterian industry, named after the Le Moustier site in France, is characterized by distinctive oval-shaped flint flakes that were carefully retouched into a variety of tools like points, scrapers, and knives. But the Neanderthals' tools weren't just practical, they also hint at a capacity for symbolic thought and artistic expression. At sites like the Bruniquel cave in France, archaeologists have uncovered enigmatic structures made from broken stalagmites, arranged in circles and stacked like bonfires. Dating back over 175,000 years, these structures suggest that Neanderthals may have engaged in ritual or symbolic behaviors long before the arrival of modern humans in Europe. As the Pleistocene climate oscillated between cold, dry glacial periods and milder interglacials, the Neanderthals had to adapt their survival strategies. During the harsher glacial periods, they focused their hunting on cold-adapted large game like woolly mammoths, woolly rhinos, and reindeer. In the milder interglacials, they expanded their diet to include a wider range of prey like red deer, wild boar, and smaller mammals. This ability to shift subsistence strategies in response to changing environmental conditions is yet another example of the Neanderthals' behavioral flexibility. Far from the stereotypical image of a dim-witted caveman, the archaeological evidence paints a picture of a highly intelligent and adaptable species. But the Neanderthals' story is also one of hardship and struggle. Life in the Pleistocene was brutal and often short. Studies of Neanderthal fossils have revealed high rates of injury and trauma, likely from dangerous hunting practices and encounters with cave bears and other large predators. Neanderthal skeletons show evidence of debilitating injuries, degenerative joint disease, and dental wear that speaks to a life of physical toil. Despite these challenges, the Neanderthals persisted for an astonishing 300,000 years. They weathered the climatic upheavals of the Pleistocene and outlasted other hominin species like the Denisovans. But their long reign was about to come to a mysterious end. Around 45,000 years ago, the first modern humans began to arrive in Europe from Africa. These Homo sapiens were anatomically similar to us, with tall, slender builds and high, rounded skulls. They brought with them a new toolkit, characterized by long, slender blades, bone needles for sewing fitted clothing, and elaborate works of art, like the famous Lion Man of Hohenstein-Städel. For several thousand years, Neanderthals and modern humans coexisted in Europe, and there is intriguing evidence of cultural exchange and even interbreeding between the two species. But by around 40,000 years ago, the Neanderthals began to disappear from the fossil record. The last known Neanderthal remains, from Spy Cave in Belgium, date to around 38,000 years ago. The reasons for the Neanderthals' extinction are still debated by scholars. Some point to the climatic instability of the period, with rapid fluctuations between cold stadial and warmer interstadial periods putting stress on Neanderthal populations. Others suggest competitive exclusion by incoming modern humans, who may have had advantages in terms of social networking, communication abilities, and technological sophistication. Interestingly, genetic evidence shows that before they disappeared, the Neanderthals interbred with modern humans. Today, people of European and Asian descent carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA in their genomes, a ghostly legacy of this ancient encounter between two human species. In the end, the Neanderthals' extinction remains one of the great mysteries of human evolution. But their long and successful reign during the Pleistocene is a testament to their resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity. The Neanderthals were not failed evolutionary experiments, but a remarkably successful human lineage that weathered the Ice Age and left an indelible mark on our species. As we ponder their fate, we are left to wonder what the Neanderthals can teach us about our own species' place in the world. In many ways, their story is a cautionary tale about the precariousness of existence and the fragility of even the most successful species. But it is also an inspiring example of the endurance and creativity of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable challenges. So the next time you find yourself marveling at the achievements of our species, our towering cities, our advanced technologies, our works of art and literature, remember that we stand on the shoulders of our Neanderthal ancestors. They too were innovators, survivors and dreamers, who left an indelible legacy etched in stone and bone. And though they vanished from the earth tens of thousands of years ago, their story lives on in us, a reminder of our deep roots and our shared human journey. Thank you for joining me on this expedition into the brutal and beautiful world of the Neanderthals. I hope you found it as captivating and thought-provoking as I have. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep marveling at the wonders of our human story. The tale of the Neanderthals begins over 400,000 years ago, in the middle of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of vast ice sheets, towering glaciers, and large, now extinct mammals roaming the earth. It was during this period that the ancestors of Neanderthals first diverged from other ancient human lineages in Africa, eventually spreading into Europe and parts of Western and Central Asia. For thousands of generations, these early Neanderthals adapted and thrived in this often frigid, unforgiving environment. Powerfully built, with barrel chests and muscular limbs, they were well suited to the physical demands of a life spent hunting large game and foraging for plant foods. Fossil evidence shows Neanderthals were top predators, successfully taking down massive prey like woolly mammoths, woolly rhinos, and giant deer using finely crafted wooden spears. But Neanderthals were far more than just brutish hunters. Recent discoveries have upended old stereotypes, revealing Neanderthals to be intelligent, innovative, and highly sophisticated for their time. Take, for example, the site of Schöningen in Germany, where archaeologists unearthed an array of skillfully crafted wooden spears dating back over 300,000 years, the oldest known hunting weapons in the archaeological record. The precision and forethought needed to create these spears suggests Neanderthals had a complex understanding of technology and planning. And it wasn't just their tools that set Neanderthals apart. Burials, like the famous Shanidar cave in Iraq, hint at the fascinating inner lives and social bonds of these early humans. Here, One Neanderthal man was laid to rest on a bed of flowers, his body carefully positioned and adorned, a moving ritual that suggests Neanderthals honored their dead and engaged in symbolic thought. Finds like a perfectly preserved leather-working tool at the site of Abri du Maras in France, and jewelry made of eagle talons at the Krapina site in Croatia, paint a picture of Neanderthals as resourceful artisans with a flair for personal ornamentation. And while no one knows for certain if they had language, the discovery of a hyoid bone has shown that Neanderthals possessed the anatomical structures needed for complex speech. As the Pleistocene epoch progressed, Neanderthals continued to evolve and adapt to their changing world. But they would soon face their greatest challenge with the arrival of a new kind of human on the scene in Eurasia, Homo sapiens. The relationship between Neanderthals and modern humans has long been portrayed as adversarial, a face-off between two species for control of the landscape and its resources. But mounting evidence suggests a far more nuanced story. Traces of Neanderthal DNA in our own genomes confirm that, at least in some instances, the two groups mated and interbred, and a growing number of sites across Eurasia, like the Grotte des Fées at Châtel-Perron in central France, show Neanderthals and modern humans coexisting side by side, even influencing each other's technology and behaviors. It seems that for a brief time, at least, Neanderthals and modern humans found ways to live and interact peacefully. But in the end, the Neanderthals would vanish from the fossil record, their fate one of history's great mysteries. What caused their disappearance around 40,000 years ago? Scientists have long debated this question, and even today, there is no one conclusive answer. Competition with rapidly expanding modern human populations, the stresses of abrupt climate change, and even assimilation through interbreeding have all been proposed as possible explanations. Perhaps it was a combination of these factors that ultimately sealed the Neanderthals' fate. But while the cause remains uncertain, the poignancy of their loss is not lost on us. The Neanderthals were, without doubt, a remarkably successful human species. They endured for 400,000 years, weathering the challenges of a harsh and ever-changing world. Their legacy lives on in the genes of many people today, and in the rich record of their lives and behaviors that continue to be uncovered. In studying the Neanderthals, we see reflections of ourselves in their resilience, their ingenuity, their capacity for symbolism, and their social ties. They remind us of the incredible diversity of the human experience and the circuitous path of our own evolution. And while their ending was one of extinction, their story is one of endurance, a testament to the indomitable spirit that unites us as human beings across the vast reaches of time. As we close this chapter on the Neanderthals, let us remember them not as brutish cavemen, but as the complex, sophisticated humans they truly were. For in their story, we find a deeper understanding of our own place in the great tapestry of human history. Our story begins over 400,000 years ago, in the middle of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of vast ice sheets, towering glaciers, and huge herds of megafauna roaming the grassy steppes of Eurasia. It was in this often brutal environment that a new species of human began to emerge and thrive, the Neanderthals. Named for the Neander Valley in Germany, where their bones were first discovered in 1856, the Neanderthals were our closest evolutionary cousins. Recent genetic analysis reveals that they split from our own lineage around 600,000 years ago, evolving distinctive physical features well suited to the frigid climes of Ice Age Europe. Picture a stocky, barrel-chested figure with a prominent brow ridge, wide nose, and a jaw lacking a protruding chin. Though they've long been caricatured as dim-witted cavemen, The archaeological record paints a very different picture of the Neanderthals. With an average brain size actually larger than our own, these hominins were anything but primitive. In fact, the Neanderthals were sophisticated toolmakers. By around 300,000 years ago, they had developed the Levallois technique, a complex method of shaping stone tools that allowed them to create a wide variety of implements, from razor-sharp flakes for cutting and scraping hides to hefty spear points for hunting large game. And hunt they did. From the icy tundra to the dense forests, Neanderthal bands pursued a variety of prey, including massive woolly mammoths, lumbering rhinoceros, and herds of reindeer, horses, and bison. Contrary to their brutish reputation, the Neanderthals were highly strategic hunters. Remains at butchery sites suggest they focused on taking down a single large animal, then processing every part of the carcass for meat, marrow, and even bone tools. This practice not only maximized caloric return, but hints at a division of labor and social cooperation among Neanderthal groups. But the Neanderthals' adaptation to Ice Age Europe came at a cost. Their stocky build and high-protein diet required a lot of energy to maintain. In the boom times of the Pleistocene, when megafauna was plentiful, the Neanderthals thrived, spreading from Western Europe to the mountains of Central Asia. But their relatively small, isolated populations were vulnerable when the climate shifted and the environment changed. Which brings us to one of the great mysteries of human prehistory: what happened to the Neanderthals? After successfully weathering several ice ages and interglacial warm spells, Neanderthal populations began to decline around 40,000 years ago, just as modern humans were expanding into Europe. By 30,000 years ago, they had vanished completely. The exact reasons for their disappearance remain hotly debated. Did modern humans outcompete or even kill off the Neanderthals? Or were other factors, like a rapidly fluctuating climate and dwindling prey, primarily to blame? As we'll see, the latest scientific evidence suggests it was likely a complex combination of forces that ultimately sealed the Neanderthals' fate. But before we explore the various extinction hypotheses, let's take a closer look at how the Neanderthals lived and the remarkable cultural abilities that archaeological finds are just beginning to reveal, from the hearths that warmed their caves to the pigments and ornaments that hint at symbolic thought. Join me as we continue our journey into the surprising world of the Neanderthals. The story of the Neanderthals begins over 400,000 years ago, in the middle of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of vast ice sheets, lower sea levels, and large land mammals. Eurasia was in the grip of an ice age, with temperatures much colder than today. It was in this challenging environment that the Neanderthals emerged as a distinct species, descended from earlier human ancestors who had spread out of Africa. Fossil evidence suggests that the Neanderthal lineage diverged from that of modern humans sometime between 500,000 and 800,000 years ago. Over millennia, the Neanderthals slowly developed the distinctive physical traits that would mark them as a separate species from their ancestors. Their bodies became stocky and powerfully built, adapted for a life of hunting and foraging in the cold steppes and forests of Eurasia. Neanderthal faces were large, with prominent brow ridges and wide noses, adaptations, perhaps, to the cold, dry air they breathed. Their jaws were robust, anchoring strong chewing muscles, well suited to a diet heavy in meat and tough plant foods. But the Neanderthals were far more than brutes. Their large brains, housed in long, low skulls, hint at an intelligence not so different from our own. Brain size alone doesn't tell the whole story, of course, but the archaeological record paints a compelling picture of a species capable of complex behaviors and sophisticated tool-making. From their earliest days, Neanderthals were technological innovators. Over 300,000 years ago, they began to craft a distinctive style of stone tools known as the Mousterian industry. These carefully flaked hand axes, spear points, and scrapers allowed Neanderthals to butcher prey, work hides, and shape wood. Wielding these tools, Neanderthal hunters pursued large game like bison, mammoths, and woolly rhinos across the frigid grasslands. They were apex predators, occupying the same ecological niche as other formidable Ice Age carnivores like cave lions and dire wolves. But hunting was a dangerous affair, and many Neanderthals bore the scars of close encounters with their prey. Healed fractures, found in nearly every skeleton studied, testify to the risks they faced in putting food on the table. Life was short and harsh, with few Neanderthals surviving past the age of 40. Yet for all the challenges they faced, Neanderthals managed to thrive across a vast swath of Eurasia for hundreds of thousands of years. From the westernmost tip of Europe to the frigid heart of Siberia and beyond, Neanderthal hearths flickered in caves and rock shelters, their stone tools littering the landscape. How did they do it? The secret to Neanderthal success lay in their ability to adapt to the ever-shifting climates and ecosystems of the Pleistocene. As ice sheets advanced and retreated, transforming tundra into forest and back again, Neanderthals found ways to eke out a living. Their tools and hunting strategies evolved to suit the available prey, from ambushing solitary woolly rhinos to driving herds of reindeer off cliffs. They learned to exploit a wide range of plant foods, from starchy tubers to nuts and berries. Some populations even turned to marine resources, diving for shellfish along the Mediterranean coast. Neanderthals were also masters of fire, using it for warmth, cooking, and protection against predators. The remains of hearths and charred bones are among the most common finds at Neanderthal sites, hinting at the central role fire played in their lives. But there was more to Neanderthal life than mere survival. Recent discoveries have begun to overturn old ideas of Neanderthals as dim-witted brutes, revealing a species with a rich inner world and a capacity for symbolic thought. At sites across Europe, archaeologists have uncovered tantalizing evidence of Neanderthal art and ornamentation. Ochre pigments, used perhaps for body painting or decorating objects, have been found at Neanderthal sites dating back over 200,000 years. Jewelry, in the form of perforated animal teeth and shells, hints at a sense of personal adornment. And in a handful of caves, from Spain to Siberia, Neanderthal artists left behind something even more extraordinary: paintings and engravings on cave walls, some of the earliest known examples of figurative art. These fragmented images, depicting animals and abstract shapes, offer a glimpse into the minds of our long-lost cousins. But even as we marvel at these accomplishments, we must remember that the Neanderthal story is ultimately one of extinction. After thriving for hundreds of millennia, they vanished from the fossil record around 40,000 years ago, their last known refuge a cave on the Rock of Gibraltar. What drove the Neanderthals to extinction after such a long and successful run? That question has puzzled scientists for over a century, and even today, the debate rages on. Did rapid climate change deal the final blow, as Ice Age conditions gave way to a warmer, wetter world? Did the Neanderthals fall prey to new diseases, or were they outcompeted by modern humans with our superior technology and social networks? Perhaps the truth lies in some combination of these factors. But one thing is certain: the disappearance of the Neanderthals was not a sudden event, but a slow, piecemeal process that unfolded over thousands of years. As their populations dwindled and fragmented, the Neanderthals faded from history, leaving only their bones and artifacts to tell their story. Today, we are the sole survivors of the human family tree, but the Neanderthals live on in us. Thanks to interbreeding between our species, Neanderthal DNA makes up 1 to 2% of the genome of modern non-African populations. It's a genetic legacy that hints at a complex history of interaction and exchange, one that blurs the lines between us and them. In the end, perhaps the Neanderthals' greatest legacy is the questions they force us to ask about ourselves. What does it mean to be human? What sets us apart from other species, and what binds us together? In grappling with the lives and fates of our vanished cousins, we come to see our own species in a new light. So as we close this journey into the world of the Neanderthals, let us remember them not as primitives or brutes, but as fellow travelers on the long road of human evolution. Their story is our story, a reminder of the twists and turns that have shaped us into the species we are today. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the Neanderthal world. I hope you've come away with a new appreciation for these remarkable humans and for the rich and complex history that connects us all. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop wondering at the astonishing story of our shared past. We begin our story over 400,000 years ago in the icy depths of the Pleistocene epoch. Eurasia was a land of stark contrasts. Vast glaciers and frozen steppes stretched for thousands of miles, broken only by pockets of hardy vegetation and the occasional oasis of shelter. This was a time of megafauna, when mammoths, woolly rhinos, cave bears, and lions roamed the landscape in search of sustenance. And it was into this challenging world that a new species of hominin emerged, the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals did not appear overnight, but rather evolved gradually from earlier populations of archaic humans. The oldest known Neanderthal remains date back around 430,000 years to the Cima de los Huesos site in Spain. There, deep within a subterranean cavern, archaeologists discovered a hoard of fossils with distinctly Neanderthal features: heavy brows, large noses, and robust bones. These ancestral Neanderthals were already well adapted to the cold climate, with barrel-chested bodies and shortened limbs that helped them conserve heat. As the Pleistocene progressed and the glaciers advanced and retreated, the Neanderthals continued to evolve and spread out across Eurasia. From the Iberian Peninsula to the Altai Mountains of Siberia, they left behind tantalizing traces of their presence: stone tools, butchered animal bones, and even the occasional relic of symbolic expression. But who were the Neanderthals, really? What was life like for these close cousins of ours, and how did they manage to thrive for so long in such a demanding environment? To answer these questions, we must look to the clues left behind in their fossils and archaeological sites. Take, for example, the famous Neanderthal site of Shanidar Cave, nestled high in the Zagros Mountains of Iraq. Here, in the 1950s, archaeologist Ralph Selecki made a remarkable discovery: a cluster of Neanderthal burials, with individuals ranging from infants to the elderly. One skeleton in particular, known as Shanidar 4, captured the imagination of researchers and the public alike. Shanidar 4 was an adult male, probably between 40 to 50 years old at the time of his death. His bones bore the unmistakable signs of a difficult life: healed fractures, worn teeth, and even a deformed right arm that had been amputated above the elbow. But what really set Shanidar 4 apart was the presence of pollen grains from several kinds of flowers clustered around his grave. Had the other Neanderthals intentionally placed these flowers as part of a burial ritual, suggesting a capacity for symbolic thought and reverence for the dead? The question is still debated by scholars today, but whether or not Shanidar 4 was laid to rest on a literal bed of flowers, his burial, and those of the other individuals at the site, hints at a level of social bonding and care for group members that we can recognize and relate to. It's a poignant reminder that for all their physical differences, the Neanderthals were more like us than they were different. They were no mere brutes, but complex beings who lived, loved, struggled and dreamed in ways that we are only beginning to understand. And as we continue our journey through their savage yet fascinating world, we will come to see the Neanderthals not as primitives, but as the fully human relatives they were. As we've seen, life for the Neanderthals was a constant struggle for survival in the face of harsh Ice Age conditions, fierce competition for resources, and the looming threat of deadly encounters with cave bears, dire wolves, and other Pleistocene predators. But there was one challenge the Neanderthals could never have anticipated: the arrival of a new kind of human on the scene in Eurasia around 40,000 years ago. Homo sapiens had already supplanted other early human species like the Denisovans in Asia and Homo erectus in Indonesia. Now they were expanding into Neanderthal territory, and the results would be catastrophic. The first meetings between Neanderthals and modern humans may have been peaceful. We know the two species interbred, because all people alive today carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. But relations quickly turned sour as the two groups competed for the same prey animals and prime hunting grounds. Neanderthals were skilled hunters, but modern humans had some key advantages. Their tools and weapons were more sophisticated, and they had spears and spear throwers that could take down prey from a distance. They were more efficient hunters, needing less calories to fuel their smaller gracile bodies. They likely had more advanced language, allowing better coordination and information sharing. As the Ice Age climate fluctuated, the Neanderthals' core mammoth steppe habitat shrank, putting more pressure on the embattled species. With their lower population numbers and limited genetic diversity due to inbreeding, Neanderthals were more vulnerable to disease, malnutrition, and reproductive issues. Gradually, they were outcompeted and replaced by the more adaptable Homo sapiens. By around 40,000 years ago, the Neanderthals had disappeared from most of their former range. The last known individuals died out in southern Spain just 28,000 years ago, perhaps the end of a tragic tale of lonely survivors cut off from the rest of their species. Why Homo sapiens triumphed while the Neanderthals dwindled away is still debated, but likely involved a complex interaction of climate stress, competition, and cognitive differences. In the end, the Neanderthals were a highly successful species who thrived for 350,000 years. That's over 10 times longer than we modern humans have walked the earth. While their world was brutal and unforgiving, it was also one of close-knit family bonds, of resilience, courage, and ingenuity in the face of extreme adversity. Neanderthals were so much more than the brutish cavemen of outdated stereotypes. The more we learn about them, the more we have to admire about these remarkable early humans, and the more we have to reflect on our own place in the great story of human origins. They may be gone, but they live on in us today. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the vanished world of the Neanderthals. I hope you found it a thought-provoking look at the challenging lives of these often misunderstood ancestors. If you enjoyed this documentary, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more compelling insights into our human past, present, and future. And I'm always interested to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments what surprised you most about the Neanderthals. From all of us here, thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time as we continue our explorations through the fascinating, savage, and strangely familiar world of our ancient human story. Until then, good night.